He had $1, one wrinkled, tired dollar he could have used to buy bread for himself and his mom. But when 10-year-old Micah Green saw a hungry man sitting alone outside a closed bakery, he didn't hesitate. He handed it over quietly, without a second thought. What Micah didn't know was that the homeless man he gave his only dollar to was actually Grant Wexler, a reclusive billionaire still grieving the loss of his family. 2 days later, everything changed. But this isn't just a story about wealth or generosity, it's a story about abandonment, courage, betrayal, and the quiet strength of a boy who grew up learning to trust consistency over blood. What happens when a missing father resurfaces to claim custody, not out of love, but for leverage? And how does a child decide who truly counts as family, the one who left, or the ones who stayed? Get ready for a journey full of emotion, confrontation, and transformation. If this story stirs your heart, like, share, and subscribe to our channel because what you're about to hear isn't just a story. It's a reminder of the power of giving and the strength in choosing your own ending. The wheels of the shopping cart squeaked with every bump in the cracked sidewalk. Micah Green, 10 years old and too observant for his age, gripped the handle tighter as he steered it around a pothole. The cart was loaded with flattened cardboard boxes, soda cans stuffed into grocery bags, and a few half-crushed plastic bottles, all collected since sunrise. He adjusted the oversized hoodie draped over his thin frame. It used to be his uncle's. Now it was his only coat. The morning air in Crestfield had that dry autumn bite sharp enough to sting, not enough to snow. Downtown's glass towers sparkled in the distance, but here in the outer blocks, where bus stops had no benches and store signs were faded, the air always felt colder. Behind him, Rosa Green, his mother, paused to rub her lower back. She wore hospital-issued scrubs beneath a faded winter coat. A long overnight shift at Crestfield General had left her eyes shadowed, but her smile still broke through when Micah turned to check on her. "That's enough for today, sweetheart," she said, glancing at her phone clock. "We've got to get you to school." Micah nodded, patting his hoodie pocket where his treasure rested, a single crumpled dollar bill. Yesterday's haul had been better than usual. He'd begged her to let him keep just $1 for himself. She'd agreed with a kiss to his forehead and a soft warning not to spend it on junk. Maybe he'd find another old sci-fi book at the library's thrift cart, or maybe a hot cocoa from the corner shop. He hadn't decided yet. As they neared the bus stop, Rosa gently touched his shoulder. "Look sharp, Micah." A man sat on the sidewalk near the bench, not on the bench beside it. His coat was layered and threadbare. Shoes looked half a size too small. A scarf was tied oddly, almost like it was hiding more than warming. But Micah didn't see just the mess of beard or dirty fingertips. He saw the eyes, sharp blue, piercing, awake, like they didn't belong to someone who had given up. The cart rolled to a stop. Rosa gave the man a polite nod, her posture tense but not unkind. The man looked up. "Morning," he said, his voice clearer than expected. Not slurred, not desperate, just tired. Micah hesitated, then offered a respectful, "Good morning, sir." The man's gaze dropped to the cart full of recyclables. "Tough start to the day." Micah shrugged. "We do what we need to do." The man tilted his head, something flickering across his face, surprise, maybe even respect. He seemed to weigh something invisible in his hands before speaking again. "I don't suppose." He began slowly. "You could spare $1 for breakfast?" Rosa's body stiffened beside Micah. She didn't interrupt, but her hand hovered protectively at her side. Micah didn't look at her. He reached into his hoodie pocket. The dollar was still there, crumpled, soft at the edges. He held it out. "Here," he said. The man blinked. "You sure?" Micah nodded. "My mom says we help when we can. Everyone deserves kindness." There was a pause, a beat of silence that felt like a held breath. Then the man slowly reached out and took the bill with both hands, as though it were something fragile. His voice cracked. "That's rare these days." Micah didn't know what to say, so he nodded again and began to push the cart forward. Rosa followed, silent until they'd turned the corner. That was very kind, she finally said, brushing his hair lightly. You okay? Micah's brows furrowed. He looked hungry, and yeah, not like the others. Rosa didn't argue. The world's complicated, she murmured, but I'm proud of you. He smiled up at her. Can I still get hot cocoa sometime? We'll find another dollar. She promised, maybe two. Neither of them looked back, and so they didn't see the man slowly rise from the sidewalk, still clutching the crumpled bill. He watched the mother and son walk away with their squeaky cart and quiet dignity. His name wasn't Joe or Rick or whatever name he might have muttered to a passerby. His name was Grant Wexler, billionaire, tech visionary, and widowed philanthropist. And everything in his world was about to change. In a private elevator 40 stories above Crestfield, the man they'd met now stood beneath rainfall from a marble showerhead, the grime of disguise circling the drain. He stared at the worn dollar bill laid gently atop the bathroom counter. It wasn't the money, it was what it represented. That child had offered everything he had to someone he thought had nothing, not out of pity, but belief in dignity, in decency. Your 9 a.m. meeting with the Strategy Council is on the 18th floor. Sir, came the voice of Eli Barrett through the intercom. Grant didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped out, still dripping, wrapped a towel around his waist, and stared out the massive window over the city. Cancel it, he said finally. There was a pause. Sir, cancel the council, Grant repeated, and bring me everything you can find on a boy named Micah Green. The scent of bergamot and oak still hung in the air as Grant Wexler buttoned the last cuff of his crisp white shirt. Outside the penthouse windows, the skyline of Crestfield shimmered under early sun, but Grant's eyes weren't on the view. They were fixed on a wrinkled piece of paper, Micah Green's dollar bill, now pressed between glass like a relic. He hadn't done something like this in years. The disguises, the street walks, the immersion in lives untouched by boardrooms and quarterly earnings. It was something his wife, Claire, used to tease him about. Your heart's always chasing shadows. Grant, just be sure you don't lose your way back. She was gone now. So was their daughter. He hadn't spoken about them in a long time. A soft chime announced a visitor. Enter, he said, voice neutral. Eli Barrett stepped in with a leather portfolio in hand, his tailored navy suit as sharp as his focus. The man was more than Grant's attorney. He was a gatekeeper, a buffer between Grant's world and everyone else's. I have the preliminary file, Eli said, holding up the folder. That was fast. You said immediately. Grant opened it. School records, rent receipts, a background report, Micah Green, 10 years old. Exceptional academic record despite transferring schools 3 times in 5 years. Lives in a 1-bedroom apartment in Northwood Flats with his mother, Rosa Green, nurse, single parent, no active support from father, behind on rent, no vehicle, utilities disconnected once this year. Grant sat in silence for a long moment, absorbing the facts like they were diagnoses. She's doing everything right, he murmured. And it's still not enough. Eli shifted. You're moved by this, more than usual. Grant closed the folder, his jaw tightened, his voice quiet. Do you remember Claire's words about the hospital program? Eli nodded. She said charity shouldn't feel like debt. Grant looked out the window, his reflection faint in the glass. This boy gave his last dollar and didn't hesitate, not even to ask what I'd do with it. He thought you were homeless. And I was? Grant said flatly. Maybe not in the way he understood, but inside hollow. There was a pause. Eli folded his hands. So what now? I want to help them. Grant said, not just with checks. I want to invest in what exactly in their future, down in the bustling heart of Crestfield. Rosa Green balanced 2 paper cups of hospital coffee and tried not to drop her phone as it buzzed in her coat pocket. She'd just clocked out of her night shift. Her entire body ached. Her mind buzzed with Micah's face that morning, calm, generous, wide-eyed. He'd handed over that dollar like it was nothing. But she knew the truth. It was everything. He'd saved it, dreamed about spending it, and still gave it away. And that man. Something about him hadn't sat right. His eyes didn't match the rest of him. Too intelligent, too still. She had seen enough people down and out to know the difference. So when the unknown number flashed on her phone, she picked up with caution, "Ms. Green." The voice was calm, male, precise. "My name is Eli Barrett. I'm the legal advisor to Mr. Grant Wexler." Rosa stopped walking. "So excuse me. He'd like to speak with you and your son. It's regarding a personal matter, one that began this morning." Rosa's mind raced. "Is this about that man at the bus stop?" "In a way?" "Yes," Eli said, "but not in the way you think." She tightened her grip on the coffee cups. "If you're selling something, we're not," Eli said gently. "But we would like to offer something. An opportunity. And assurances. Mr. Wexler would prefer to meet in person." Silence stretched between them. Finally, Rosa spoke. "We'll listen, but I'm bringing someone with me." "Of course," Eli said. "We'll arrange transportation. You'll be safe. Safe." It had been a long time since Rosa Green had felt that word meant something. That afternoon, the marble lobby of Wexler Industries hummed with quiet power. Business executives crossed the floor in polished shoes, but none glanced at the woman in the thrifted coat or the boy with his sleeves rolled past his wrists. Micah stared at the elevator panels like they belonged on a spaceship. "Will he be there?" he whispered. Rosa adjusted the strap of her purse. "We're just here to listen. Don't say yes to anything, not until we understand." The elevator doors opened. Eli greeted them in a gray vest and steel blue tie. He was younger than Rosa expected, warm, in an efficient kind of way. "Mizzy Green, Micah, welcome." They followed him into a sunlit conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows and a single object placed in the center of the table. The dollar. Rosa blinked. Micah's eyes widened. Grant Wexler entered a moment later. Clean-shaven, crisp lines, but the same eyes. "I believe we've met," he said softly. Micah nodded. "You're different." Grant smiled faintly. "Not really. Just better dressed." He turned to Rosa. "Your son reminded me that real wealth isn't in what we keep. It's in what we give when no one's looking." Rosa didn't respond. "Not yet. I want to offer Micah a full scholarship to Hawthorne Prep. Books, tuition, mentorship, everything." Micah's eyes darted to his mother's face. "And for you," Grant continued, "a position at the Wexler Family Trust, healthcare outreach, triple your current salary, more reasonable hours, full benefits." Rosa's throat worked, but no sound came. Finally, she asked, why Grant picked up the dollar from the table, because most people ignore someone who looks like nothing. But your son saw a human being? The apartment always smelled like lemon disinfectant and overboiled pasta. It was all Rosa Green could afford. Northwood Flats, Building C, 3rd floor, Unit 3B. The hallway light had been flickering for weeks. The wallpaper peeled where the radiator hissed, but she kept the inside spotless, always. Micah sat at the kitchen table, notebook open, pencil tapping in rhythm to the ticking wall clock. He wasn't doodling, which meant something was weighing on him. That was his tell. Rosa stirred the last bit of tomato soup on the stovetop, watching him out of the corner of her eye. He hadn't said much since the meeting. She couldn't blame him. Neither had she. Everything that man Grant Wexler offered had sounded like a fairy tale, a prep school, a scholarship, a real salary, no overnight shifts, health insurance that actually covered things. Even paid time off, something she hadn't had in 5 years. But it was too much. No one gave that much without wanting something. The sharp knock startled them both. Micah sat up. Rosa turned the burner off and wiped her hands on a dish towel. "Stay there," she said softly, walking toward the door. She didn't expect anyone, not neighbors, not rent collectors, not this late. She checked the peephole. A tall man in a charcoal overcoat stood in the hallway. Posture straight, hands folded neatly in front of him. He wasn't a cop, and not building management. They never came alone. "Who is it?" she called, phone already in her hand. "Eli Barrett." "Ma'am," came the reply. "I work for Mr. B. Wexler. I'm here with the details of our offer." Her hand hovered over the chain. "My son," she said through the crack. "What about him?" Eli's voice remained steady. "This visit is purely voluntary. Ms. Green, nothing binding, Mr. Wexler just wants you to have all the information. We can leave if you prefer." She looked at Micah, who was now standing in the kitchen doorway. Quiet, curious. She undid the chain. The man stepped in with measured calm. He took in the apartment quickly but not judgmentally, just observant, the way someone might catalog details at a patient's bedside. "May I sit?" he asked. Rosa nodded warily. "Don't touch the heater. It sparks." Eli gave a small smile and opened his briefcase. He handed over a folder, then sat back, letting her flip through the documents at her own pace. Micah leaned on the counter, arms crossed, not skeptical, just studying. "This isn't charity," Rosa said after a minute, still reading. "No," Eli replied. "It's an opportunity. That always comes with strings." Eli didn't deny it. In this case, the only expectation is honesty and space. "Mr. Wexler has no intention of interfering with how you raise your son." Rosa closed the folder. "Why us?" Eli paused, then he looked at Micah. "Because your son offered something most people wouldn't. He saw a person when others would have seen a problem." Micah's ears turned red. "Mr. Wexler." "Lost people," Eli added gently. "He's not trying to replace them. He's trying to honor them." Rosa blinked. Not many men would admit loss through a lawyer. Not many would even send one who understood how to say that without sounding cold. She exhaled slowly, as if letting out 4 years of tight breath. "You'll give me time to think." "As much as you need," Eli replied. "Standing, there's no deadline." Micah walked him to the door. "Do you really work for him?" the boy asked, tilting his head. "You don't seem like the rich kind." Eli smiled. "I work for him, yes. And he doesn't hire people who forget where they came from." Micah nodded like that made perfect sense. Rosa watched from the kitchen, hands resting on the back of a chair. After the door closed, they stood in silence. Then Micah spoke. "Mom, yeah, if we say no, does that mean I was wrong to give the dollar?" She turned. "No, baby. It means we're careful." He thought for a moment, then asked, "But can I still hope?" She didn't answer right away. She walked over, cupped his face with her hands, and kissed his forehead. "You can always hope." The next morning, Rosa sat in the break room at the hospital, the folder spread across her lap. Around her, nurses chatted about double shifts and sore feet. She barely heard them. She'd read the paperwork 3 times already. Everything was above board. Wages clearly defined, no non-disclosure clause, full benefits, relocation stipend, and on page 7, educational trust in Micah's name, enough to cover not just prep school, but college. She looked down at her cracked phone screen. A photo of Micah smiling, missing his 2 front teeth, stared back at her. A soft voice interrupted her thoughts. "You look like someone who's about to jump off a cliff," said Nurse Carla, slipping into the seat beside her with 2 styrofoam cups of lukewarm coffee. "Feels like it," Rosa muttered. "Anything good?" Rosa hesitated, then showed her the Wexler logo. Carla's eyebrows lifted. "Whoa, you're getting recruited by a trust my kid gave $1 to a stranger," Rosa said flatly. "And now we're here." Carla chuckled. "Sounds like something out of a movie." "What's stopping you, Pride?" Rosa admitted, fear, not knowing what happens next. Carla sipped. "I once turned down help when my sister offered to watch my kids so I could go back to school. Took me 4 more years to finish. That pride didn't feed us." Rosa nodded, absorbing it. Later that night, she sat with Micah on their old couch, the springs groaning beneath them. "Do you want to try this?" she asked. He looked up. The school, all of it. Micah swallowed. Are you scared a little? Me too. She smiled. Okay, then let's be scared together. Micah Green stood in front of the mirror in their new apartment, tugging awkwardly at the stiff blazer. The navy blue fabric felt too heavy. The school crest, a golden hawk with wings outstretched, seemed to glare at him from his chest. His shoes were new and unscuffed. Even the socks were part of the uniform. I look like someone else, he mumbled. From across the room, Rosa Green looked up from tying her own work shoes. You look like you belong. Micah frowned. That's not how I feel. She stood, crossed the small space between them, and adjusted his collar. You don't have to feel it yet. You just have to walk in like it's already true. Micah nodded slowly, outside their window. Crestfield shimmered in early morning sun. Their new place wasn't big, but it was clean, bright, and came with real heat and water pressure, a step up from Northwood Flats. A small miracle, the first of many maybe, but miracles, Micah was learning, came with strange pressure, a weight in his chest, an expectation to make it worth it. The knock at the door broke his thoughts. Driver's here, Rosa said, grabbing her coat. They rode down in the elevator in silence, the buttons glowing gold against the polished paneling. Micah's reflection stared back at him from the door's sharp jawline, uncertain eyes, a boy wearing someone else's skin. Hawthorne Preparatory Academy looked like the kind of place you saw in movies about rich kids who solved mysteries or played lacrosse on weekends. Red brick buildings, clean white columns, a front lawn so perfect it looked painted on. Students in crisp uniforms streamed through the gates sloughing, joking, checking phones. Their backpacks were leather, not canvas. Their shoes didn't squeak. Micah held his own bag close. He felt like a shadow cast into sunlight. At the entrance, a black SUV pulled up behind them. The back door opened. Grant Wexler stepped out, his tailored coat flaring slightly in the breeze. He didn't wear a tie today, just a soft sweater over a collared shirt. Somehow he looked more real that way. Good morning, he said with a smile. Micah managed a quiet, hi. Rosa offered a handshake. You didn't need to come in person, I wanted to. Grant said, first days matter. Micah looked around, how you ever go to a place like this? Grant chuckled, long time ago. I didn't like it much either, but it grows on you. The headmaster met them at the main doors. Dr. Ellison, tall and silver-haired, stuck with a handshake that lasted 1 second too long and a practiced smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. We're honored to have you. Micah, he said. You've impressed a lot of people already. Micah nodded but didn't speak. He hated when people said he was impressive before they even knew him. As they stepped inside, Rosa lingered for a moment. She looked around at the tiled floors, the quiet hallways, the bulletin boards with laminated calendars and smiling student photos. She whispered to Grant, "Don't let them make him feel small." Grant's face softened. He won't be alone. Micah's first class was history. The teacher, Ms. Kendall, introduced him to the class with an eager tone and a gesture toward the empty seat near the window. He slid into the chair without looking around. The boy beside him didn't speak. The girl in front of him barely turned her head. By lunch, he'd memorized the rhythm of the day, the way the bell didn't really ring, it chimed, the way no one ran to class, because they weren't afraid of being late. The cafeteria looked more like a corporate lounge, smooth countertops, fresh fruit, gluten-free labels on everything. Micah stood in line with his tray, not sure what half the food was. You're the scholarship kid, right? The voice came from behind him. A boy with perfect hair and a polo that looked tailored. Micah turned, yeah. The boy grinned, not unkindly. Cool, that's gutsy. I'd never have the nerve. Micah blinked. Go to school. To walk into a place like this knowing everyone knows you're not from here. There was no insult in the tone, but it still stung. Guess I don't think about that much, Micah said, turning away. The truth was, thought about it constantly. That night, Rosa made chicken stir-fry in their new kitchen. Micah picked at his plate, unusually quiet. First day's always weird, she offered. He nodded. Kids okay. They weren't mean, just not curious. She set down her fork. Want to talk about it? He thought for a moment, then said, I feel like I'm playing a part, and if I mess up, they'll know I don't belong. Rosa leaned back, folding her arms. When I started working in the cardiac unit, everyone assumed I was the receptionist. Took months before anyone remembered I had a license. I had to remind them, every day without saying a word. How he asked. By being better than they expected. Quieter, sharper, patient. Micah looked at her. What if they never see it? She smiled. Then you keep showing up until they have no choice. Later that week, Micah lingered in the science lab after school. The teacher, Dr. Reyes, had offered him extra time to explore the equipment. He didn't say much, just handed Micah a set of test tubes and stepped back. Micah's hands moved slowly at first. Then with growing confidence, measure, stir, observe. Science didn't care where your shoes came from. It only cared if you paid attention. He was so focused, he didn't hear the door open. You're really into this. Huh. Came a voice. Micah turned. A girl with dark braids leaned in the doorway. Her uniform was slightly askew. Her smile was casual, not mocking. I'm Jasmine Ellis, she said, your lab partner on Mondays. Micah blinked. You sure, unless you're Micah Green. And if you're not, I'm talking to a ghost. He smiled. I'm Micah. Cool, she said, stepping inside. Nice to meet the new genius. I'm not a genius. She shrugged. You knew how to adjust the pH levels on the first try? That counts. He stared at her. You noticed? She grinned. I'm observant. It's a coping skill. Micah laughed quietly. Maybe. Just maybe. Someone else here understood what it felt like to wear a uniform that didn't fight, at least not yet. The science lab smelled like vinegar and metal. Micah Green adjusted the microscope slide, trying to focus. It was the last period of the day, and the room was quiet, just the low hum of the fan and the occasional scrape of a chair leg. He liked it that way. Concentration was easier when everything else slowed down. He didn't notice the door open. Micah. The voice hit him like a chord struck out of tune, deep, familiar, somehow. Micah turned toward the sound slowly. A man stood in the doorway, tall, lean, in a secondhand leather jacket that hadn't aged well. The collar was frayed, the jeans were clean but faded. His face was all sharp angles and unfinished expressions. But it was the eyes. Micah had only seen them in the mirror brown with a little green near the iris. The kind of detail you don't forget. Dad. The word felt foreign, like trying on a sweater from a box you thought you'd thrown out years ago. The man's smile was tight but practiced. Look at you, all grown up in that fancy uniform. Micah stood still, heart thudding in his chest. The science lab felt suddenly too small, too quiet. Dr. Reyes appeared at the back of the room, brows raised. Everything all right here? He asked when looking between them. This your teacher, the man said. Micah nodded. I'm his dad. The man added quickly, just visiting, Dr. Reyes looked at Micah. That true Micah hesitated, then nodded again. Yeah, he's my father. Well, Dr. Reyes said cautiously, visiting hours are almost up. The lab needs cleaning before I go. I'll take care of it. Micah said, his voice steady. The teacher disappeared into his office, but the air didn't relax. The man stepped inside, hands in his pockets. You've got Rosa's serious face, he said. Micah didn't smile. What are you doing here? Trying to see my son. You haven't tried for 4 years. The words came out flat, not angry, just factual. His father winced. I know. I screwed up. Micah kept his arms folded. You didn't even call. I didn't know where to reach you. You could have asked. There was silence. Then his father rubbed the back of his neck. Your mom around, she's working. He checked his watch. She picking you up soon. Then we've got time for ice cream, like old times. Micah paused. I don't know. Come on, just one scoop, not kidnapping you. Micah hesitated, then slung his bag over his shoulder. Let me text Mom first. He pulled out his phone, typed a quick message, kept it vague, not sure how to explain yet. His father waited outside the gates, hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets. They walked a block to a small shop with a bell over the door, the kind of place Micah used to imagine rich kids went after school. His father ordered for both of them without asking. I remember your favorite, he said. Micah sat across from him in the booth. The ice cream melted fast. He didn't touch it. His father took a slow bite and leaned back. You ever think about me? Micah blinked. Sometimes. What did you think? I thought you were dead or in jail. Then I thought maybe you just didn't care. His father nodded, eyes flickering, and I did care. I just wasn't ready. Micah looked down at his spoon. What changed? A beat passed. You're at Hawthorne Prep now, his father said. That's a big deal. Not everyone gets that kind of opportunity. Micah's stomach twisted. There it was. The turn. You heard about Wexler, he said quietly. His father hesitated. It was in the paper. The kid from Northwood Flats. Full ride. Single mom, caught my eye. Micah's chest tightened. So you came back? His father leaned in, voice lower. Micah, I'm still your dad. And you've got a future now. That means we have a future. Micah stood up. I need to go. Micah, but he was already walking out the door. Rosa's car pulled up to the curb just as he stepped onto the sidewalk. She saw him. Then she saw him. Her mouth opened, stunned. Sean. Her voice barely carried. Micah turned to see his father raising one hand casually, like he was saying hello from a few blocks down the street. Thought I'd reconnect with my boy, he said lightly. Rosa opened the door, urgency in her voice. Micah, get in. Micah obeyed without speaking. The door slammed shut. Rosa's hands were shaking on the steering wheel. Did he talk to you? Micah nodded. What did he say? That he missed me? That we're family now? Rosa exhaled hard, blinking fast. He's not part of this. Micah. He hasn't been part of anything. Micah looked out the window. I know. Later that evening, in the quiet office of Grant Wexler, Rosa paced the length of the room like a storm bottled into human form. He showed up without warning. No call, no notice. Just walked into my son's life like nothing happened. Grant sat still, his expression unreadable. Eli Barrett stood nearby, already scrolling through files. Why do you think he's here now? Grant asked softly. Rosa didn't hesitate. Because Micah has access to your world now, and that makes us valuable. Micah sat on the sofa, silent, his hands twisted in his lap. Do you want him in your life? Grant asked him gently. Micah shook his head. I wanted a dad, but not this version. Grant's voice was low. We'll protect you, legally, financially, whatever it takes. Micah looked at him. But what if he makes it a fight? Eli finally spoke. Then we'll be ready. Micah nodded, but inside, a different storm had started. A quiet voice whispering, what if you're the reason everything breaks again? The Crestfield Public Library was colder than usual. Micah Green sat tucked away on the third floor, deep in the quiet stacks between biography and local history. He had a laptop open on the table in front of him, a gift from the Wexler Trust, though it still felt like it belonged to someone else. The screen glowed softly, casting faint shadows on his notebook. He hadn't touched his math homework. Instead, the search bar stared back at him, waiting. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. Sean Doyle, Crestfield. He typed the words slowly, as if each letter cost him something. A few links popped up right away. Court records, missed child support payments, small claims lawsuits. A dismissed assault charge from 3 years ago. A mugshot that looked too familiar. Micah's stomach twisted. The man in the photo had his jawline, his cowlick, his eyes. He scrolled further local news articles, one about a fight outside a bar, another about unpaid rent. Each new headline chipped away at the vague image Micah had held onto for years, the dream version of a dad who might have just gotten lost or scared but still loved him. That version didn't exist. The one who showed up for ice cream yesterday had smiled like a wolf. And he knew about Grant Wexler. He didn't come back for me, Micah thought. He came back for what I represent. The tears came before he realized they were there. He wiped them away roughly, frustrated, angry with himself for hoping, for wishing. A quiet voice broke the stillness. Doing some research, Micah turned fast, startled. Eli Barrett stood a few feet away, hands in the pockets of his overcoat. He looked like he belonged in a courtroom, not a library aisle, but his tone was calm, gentle. It's homework, Micah lied. Eli didn't push, just nodded and stepped closer, placing a small leather briefcase on the table. Your mother mentioned you might be here, he said. She's worried about you. I'm fine, Micah muttered, closing the browser window quickly. It's not a big deal. Eli sat down across from him, folding his hands. I've worked with a lot of people who say that when something's absolutely a big deal. Micah didn't answer. His shoulders curled inward. Eli waited. His silence wasn't heavy, just present. Finally, Micah whispered. He said he missed me. Eli tilted his head slightly. But I think he just missed the opportunity, Micah added. The words felt like sand in his throat row, dry, bitter. Eli nodded. It's hard when someone shows up only after your life starts to improve. Micah looked down at the table. He said we could be a family again. And do you believe that Micah didn't answer? His lips pressed together. Then is it bad if part of me still wants it to be true? No, Eli said gently. It means you have hope. That's not a flaw. It's human. Micah met his eyes. But it makes me feel stupid. Weak. It makes you good. Eli replied. And sometimes being good hurts more than being tough. Micah leaned back, crossing his arms. Everyone wants something. What if even Mr. Wexler is like that? Eli's brows raised. What do you mean? What if he's just helping us so he can feel better about himself? The question hung in the air. Eli took a long breath before answering. He is trying to feel something again. That much is true. Micah's face tightened, but not at your expense. Eli added. You didn't ask for help. You didn't beg. You didn't pretend. You just gave. Micah looked away. Sometimes people with everything forget what it feels like to be seen. Eli continued. Grant saw something real in you. You reminded him who he used to be, or who he wants to become again. There was a pause, and that scares him more than you know. Micah sat quietly for a while. Then he said, My dad said he had rights. Legal ones. If he fights, can he take me? Eli opened his briefcase, pulled out a file folder, and tapped it twice. He can try, but a judge will look at more than blood. What if I have to choose? Eli nodded. Then you choose the life that's building you, not breaking you. Micah stared down at his hands. They were calloused from collecting cans, from pushing carts, from opening doors that often stayed closed. I don't want him to ruin this, he said. He won't, Eli said firmly, because now, he's not the only one standing in your corner. That night, Rosa tucked Micah in, something she hadn't done since he was 9. She sat beside him, brushing his hair back. He wants money, doesn't he? Micah asked quietly, her breath caught. She didn't lie. Yes. And he's not going away. Not without a price. Micah stared at the ceiling. Mr. Wexler could pay him. Rosa frowned. Is that what you want? Micah hesitated. I don't know what I want anymore. There it was. The truth. Everything had been so clear before: the cardboard runs, the lunch from the thrift store, the way Rosa smiled even when her shoes were wet and her bones were tired. Now everything was bigger, louder, brighter, harder. Rosa squeezed his hand. "It's not your fault," he came back. Micah's voice cracked. "But if I hadn't given that dollar," she stopped him. "That dollar was kindness, not a mistake." He turned toward the wall, curling slightly under the blanket. Rosa stayed a moment longer, then whispered, "You didn't cause this. He did. And no matter what happens, you're not going through it alone." Outside their window, the city buzzed beneath the soft glow of street lamps. And in that quiet corner of Crestfield, a boy who used to have only $1 now had something more dangerous and powerful than money: perspective. The envelope was thick, formal, and left wedged between the front door and the frame. Rosa Green found it on her way back from the grocery store, Micah's favorite cereal under one arm, her phone buzzing with low battery alerts in her pocket. She knew what it was before she even picked it up. The letterhead was cold and confident: Doyle and Richmond, LLP, Family Law and Parental Rights. Her heart sank. She didn't even open it until Micah had gone to bed. Later that evening, in the living room of their apartment, bright and modest, the hum of the fridge the only background noise. Rosa sat with the document spread out on the coffee table. Her hands were still trembling. The letter was clear. Sean Doyle was petitioning for partial custody. The phrasing was designed to sound neutral, even reasonable, in the interest of re-establishing familial bonds, concern for the well-being of the child. But Rosa read between the lines. He wanted leverage, access, a seat at a table he'd abandoned years ago and only returned to once there was something to gain. She didn't realize she was crying until a tear hit the paper and bled the ink. The next morning, Micah knew something was wrong before Rosa even spoke. She poured his orange juice without looking at him. Burned the toast? Set her coffee down too hard? "Mom," he asked. She finally sat, her expression guarded. "We got a letter," she said, "from your father's lawyers." Micah didn't blink. He'd been expecting it, dreading it. "He wants custody, partial." Rosa said bitterly. "He wants time, rights, input, but not me." Micah said, "He wants what I represent." Rosa reached for his hand. "We're not giving up without a fight." He nodded, but he felt something unraveling inside, a knot of guilt, fear, and anger. At Wexler Tower. Grant's office was unusually quiet when Rosa walked in. Eli Barrett sat with his laptop open, already scanning through documents. Grant stood near the window, arms folded, watching the city unfold like a chessboard beneath him. He made it official. Rosa said without sitting. Eli nodded. "We received a parallel notice. He's filed the motion in family court. What are our options?" Eli clicked open a document. "We'll fight. On grounds of abandonment, financial neglect, and questionable intent. We'll counterfile to retain full custody under existing guardianship." "Will that be enough?" Rosa asked. Grant turned. "It will help, but the court may still want to hear from Micah." Rosa inhaled sharply. "He's 10. He's articulate, thoughtful." Grant replied, "The judge may consider his voice." Rosa looked away. "He shouldn't have to go through this." "No." Grant agreed. "But if he does, he won't go through it alone." That night, Micah sat curled up on the couch, sketching quietly in his notebook. Not drawings this time, just words, phrases, things that had been bouncing around his mind like marbles. Family doesn't vanish when money appears. Kindness doesn't mean weakness. You can miss someone and still not want them back. He didn't hear Rosa approach until she was sitting beside him. "You okay?" she asked softly. He shrugged. "I'm tired of being the reason people argue." "You're not the reason," she said immediately. "You're the excuse he's using. There's a difference." Micah rested his head on her shoulder. "Do you think he ever really wanted me?" Rosa didn't lie. "I think he wanted the idea of you. But the real you. The one who notices everything and gives even when he has nothing. He didn't know how to handle that." They sat in silence for a while. Then Rosa whispered, "If you ever want to talk to someone about the hard parts, you don't have to just carry it." Micah nodded. But inside, something else had started to bloom, not just sadness, but resolve. The next day, Jasmine Ellis found Micah in the lab again. He wasn't experimenting, just cleaning beakers, lining things up, controlling what he could. She dropped her backpack on the table and leaned against the counter. "You good?" she asked. Micah didn't answer right away. "Then my dad's trying to take me away from my mom." Jasmine blinked. "Whoa." He looked up, but not because he loves me, because he thinks it'll give him money. She slid onto the stool beside him, quiet for a beat. "My cousin's mom tried something like that once. Said she wanted time with her child, but she really wanted a paycheck." Micah looked at her, surprised. "What happened?" "They fought in court. My aunt won. But it was ugly." He looked down. "I don't want things to get ugly, but I don't want him to win either." She nudged his elbow. "You're stronger than you look. Green. And smarter than half this school." Micah smiled faintly. "Thanks." That evening, Rosa, Micah, Grant, and Eli sat around the kitchen table. The energy felt different, tense, but focused. "We've submitted the preliminary response," Eli explained. "Now we wait for the court date," Micah asked. "Will I have to talk to a judge?" "Possibly," Eli replied. "Only if they feel your perspective is necessary." Grant leaned forward. "Micah, you don't have to say anything you're not comfortable with." Micah looked at each of them, then said clearly, "I want to speak." Rosa stared. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "If I don't, they'll just guess how I feel. I'd rather tell them." Grant gave him a long, steady look. Then he smiled. "You remind me of someone," he said softly. She was brave too. As the night settled in and the city lights flickered beyond the windows, Micah lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. He was scared, angry, but more than that, he was ready, not just to speak, but to be heard. The sun was low, casting long shadows across Greenstone Park, the playground quiet except for a few rusty swing chains creaking in the breeze. Micah Green sat alone on a bench near the sandbox, notebook in his lap. His pencil moved in slow, uncertain lines. Not sketches this time, just scribbles. Words that didn't know where to go yet. Half-formed thoughts, fragmented emotions. This park used to be his place of comfort. Back before everything changed. Before the Wexler Trust. Before Hawthorne Prep. Before his father returned like a ghost in daylight. Now it felt like neutral ground, where nothing made sense and everything felt too exposed. He didn't hear the footsteps at first, but he sensed the presence. "I figured I'd find you here." Sean Doyle's voice carried like gravel across asphalt. Uneven, intentional. Micah didn't look up. Sean took a seat at the far end of the bench, not close but not far enough. "I used to bring you here when you were little," he said. "You liked the swings." Micah's grip on his pencil tightened. "You brought me once, then never came back." Sean smirked faintly. "You remember that I remember everything," Micah said. His voice was quiet, steady, especially the parts no one else talks about. Sean leaned back, exhaling. "I didn't come here to fight." Micah finally looked at him. "Then why are you here?" Sean tapped the top of the bench with 2 fingers. "Because I'm your father." "No," Micah said calmly. "You're just the guy who left." There was a pause. Sean's jaw worked, but no words came. "I didn't have money back then," he muttered finally. "I was drowning." "So you left my mom to drown alone?" Micah asked. "I didn't think I had a choice." "There's always a choice." Sean looked at him. "You don't understand how hard it is to stay when everything's falling apart." Micah stared at the ground. "But you came back when everything looked fixed." The silence between them sharpened like a knife. "I want what's best for you," Sean said. Micah turned fully toward him. "You don't even know who I am anymore. What I like. What scares me. Who my friends are. You want what's best for you." Sean's face tightened. "You're just a kid. You don't get how the world works yet." Micah stood. You're right. He said, I'm a kid. But I know that real parents don't show up only when there's money involved. Sean stood too, taller, but not stronger. You're being brainwashed by that billionaire. He snapped. No, Micah replied. I'm being seen. From across the parking lot, a sleek black sedan pulled up. The passenger door opened before it fully stopped. Rosa Green stepped out, her eyes scanning fast. She spotted Micah, then Sean. Her posture shifted in a flash from worried mother to fierce protector. Micah noticed too. He raised a hand toward her. It's okay. I've got this. She hesitated, then walked toward them slowly. A second later, the driver's side door opened. Grant Wexler stepped out, cool and calm in a dark wool coat. His presence didn't announce itself, it settled, like gravity. Sean laughed dryly. Well, if it isn't the billionaire himself. Grant's face didn't move. Mr. Doyle, what's this? Sean asked. Micah's personal security escort. No, always, Grant replied. I'm someone who respects boundaries. Sean snorted. Spare me the lecture. Micah looked at Grant, then Rosa, then Sean. I need to say this. He said. They fell silent. Micah stepped forward. Not angry. Not afraid. Just steady. You don't get to show up and call yourself a father because it's convenient, he said. You missed birthdays, report cards, nights when mom came home crying from work, days we had to collect cans just to buy school lunch. Sean opened his mouth, but Micah raised a hand. I don't want your money. I don't want your time. I wanted your presence, and you were gone. That was your choice. Micah's eyes glistened, but his voice didn't break. You don't get to demand anything now. Sean scoffed. You think you can erase me? No, Micah said. You erased yourself. I'm just making it official. Sean stepped back. His face changed, no longer arrogant. Just tired, older, smaller. You sound like him? He said, nodding toward Grant. Micah shook his head. No, I sound like me. Sean turned and walked away without another word. Rosa exhaled hard, walking quickly to Micah and pulling him into a hug. I'm okay, he whispered. I know, she said. But let me hug you anyway. Grant stayed back, watching quietly. Micah looked over Rosa's shoulder and met his gaze. There was no celebration in Grant's face, only respect. He gave Micah a small nod. Micah returned it. Later that night, in their apartment, Rosa made tea while Micah stared out the window at the dark city streets. Did I do the right thing? He asked softly. She set down the mugs and sat beside him. There's no easy way to deal with someone who gave up on you, she said. But I saw you today. You stood in your truth. That's rare. That's brave. Micah looked down at his hands. He's still going to try in court, isn't he? Yes, Rosa said. But now we're ready. He nodded. Mom. Yeah, I don't feel afraid anymore. She reached out and squeezed his hand. Neither do I. The Crestfield family court building rose like a gray fortress against the morning sky. Micah Green stood between Rosa and Eli Barrett at the base of the marble steps. His blazer itched, his shoes pinched, but it wasn't the clothes that made him uncomfortable, it was the cameras. Reporters clustered like birds at the edge of a storm, their microphones extended, their voices overlapping. Miss Green, is it true your ex-husband is seeking custody now that your son is connected to Grant Wexler? Mr. Wexler, are you funding the legal battle? Micah, do you want to live with your father? Eli stepped forward with practiced calm. No comments at this time. Please respect the minor's privacy. Micah's hand tightened in Rosa's. He'd never been afraid of attention before, but this wasn't attention. It was invasion, inside. The building was quieter but no less intimidating. Echoing footsteps with stern faces, legal pads flipping open like wings. They entered courtroom 4B, light wood panels, a single flag, a high bench where Judge Marianne Harmon presided with silver-rimmed glasses and a gaze that saw straight through excuses. Everyone ready, she asked, scanning the room. Eli nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Sean Doyle's attorney, a sleek, overconfident man named Craig Sloan, adjusted his tie and said, "Ready." Rosa sat beside Micah at the front table. Grant Wexler sat quietly behind them, composed but watchful. Sloan stood first. He painted Sean as a man who had made mistakes but wanted to rebuild his relationship with his son. He used words like reconciliation, opportunity, healing. Micah kept his face still, but inside, something burned. Then Sloan went further. He gestured toward Rosa and Grant. My client believes that while Ms. Green has done her best, the recent insertion of an extremely wealthy benefactor into Micah's life has created a distortion, a new reality driven by privilege and power, not parental love. Grant's jaw tensed. Rosa's grip on the table edge whitened. Micah looked down, heat rising in his cheeks. Sloan closed smoothly. All my client asks is a seat at the table, a chance to be a father. Eli rose, calm and deliberate. He began by outlining Sean Doyle's history of absence. 4 years without contact, no birthday cards, no child support, no effort. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't attack. He let the facts speak. Only when Mr. Wexler extended his support did Mr. Doyle reemerge, not as a parent but as a petitioner. This is not about love. This is about leverage. Judge Harmon made notes silently. I'd like to call our first witness. Eli said, Ms. Rosa Green. Rosa stepped forward, her heels clicking softly. She took the oath, her voice steady. She answered questions with clarity: how she'd worked double shifts, how she'd shielded Micah from eviction, how she'd stayed up at night reading science books with him when he couldn't sleep. When Sloan cross-examined, he tried to imply that Rosa had manipulated Micah's view of his father. Her eyes flared. Micah's opinions are his own. He saw who showed up and who didn't. Next came Dr. Reyes, Micah's science teacher, then Jasmine Ellis's aunt, who testified to seeing Rosa walk Micah to school in the rain when he was 6. Then Grant Wexler was called. He spoke little of himself. Instead, he spoke of the first time he saw Micah, the boy with calloused hands who gave away his only dollar without hesitation. He didn't know who I was. He had no reason to expect anything. And still, he gave. Why did that move you so deeply? Mr. Wexler, the judge asked. Grant paused. Because after losing my wife and daughter, I stopped believing that kind of generosity existed. Micah reminded me I was wrong. Sloan stood. Is it true you're financially supporting the Green family? Yes. And do you have any legal interest in Micah? No. Grant said firmly. Only a personal one. I care about his future. That doesn't require custody. It requires presence. Judge Harmon sat back, silent for a moment. Then I'd like to speak to Micah privately, in my chambers. The courtroom stirred. Eli leaned down. You okay? Micah nodded. Rosa kissed his temple. Just speak your truth. The judge's chambers smelled like polished wood and old paper. Family photos lined the shelves behind her desk. A school picture, a drawing from a grandchild. She didn't sit behind the desk. She sat in a chair beside Micah, making the room feel smaller. Human. Micah, she said gently. I know this is a lot for someone your age, but I'd like to hear what you think, not what lawyers or parents have said. Micah looked down at his shoes, then up at her. And he spoke, not fast, not loud, just real. I don't hate my dad, he said, but he didn't come back because he missed me. He came back because other people care about me now. The judge nodded. And how does that make you feel used? Micah admitted. I wanted him to come back for me, not because I got lucky, and not to take credit for things he didn't build. What do you want? Micah didn't hesitate. I want to stay with my mom. I want to keep my life, my school. The people who showed up, I don't want to go backward. The judge leaned back, her face unreadable. But her eyes were kind. Thank you, she said softly. That was very brave. When Micah returned to the courtroom, all eyes turned to him, but he didn't flinch. He walked straight to Rosa, sat down, took her hand. Judge Harmon returned a few minutes later. "We'll resume witness testimony tomorrow," she said, "but for now, we are adjourned." The gavel came down, and so did a small weight from Micah's chest, not all of it, but enough. 2 days after the courtroom hearing, the Green apartment was still quiet, but not with peace. It was a different kind of quiet, the kind that made the ticking clock louder, the kind that made water boiling on the stove sound like a scream. Micah sat on the couch, staring at a sealed manila envelope on the coffee table. His knees were drawn up to his chest. He hadn't spoken much since they left the courthouse. Not out of fear, not even sadness, but something deeper. Processing. Rosa sat across from him. Her fingers were laced tightly. She had seen war in hospital waiting rooms, in the grocery aisle when her card declined, but nothing matched the battlefield of watching her son grow old too fast. The envelope sat between them like a quiet dare. Finally, she broke the silence. "Do you want to open it?" Micah shook his head. "Not yet. It's your choice," she said gently. But he already knew what was inside. A settlement, voluntary termination of parental rights. Sean Doyle had made a choice, or perhaps accepted the one Micah had already made for him in the park. He'd offered to sign away all legal claims to Micah in exchange for a modest financial payout, quietly arranged and funded through the Wexler Trust. It wasn't extortion. It wasn't forgiveness. It was a clean cut, a legal erasure. That afternoon, they met in Eli Barrett's office. Micah hadn't wanted to go, but Grant had asked, gently, and said there was something Micah deserved to see. The meeting room was full of glass and shadow. Eli stood near the window, hands folded, the envelope now on the table between them. Grant sat beside Micah, his tone soft. He agreed. "We didn't coerce him. He signed voluntarily." "Why now?" Micah asked. "Because you made it clear he had no more power left." Eli said he knew he couldn't win in court. "This saves him face and gives you freedom." Micah leaned forward, running his fingers along the sealed flap. "Does this make me legally fatherless?" "No," Eli replied. "It makes you legally protected." Micah exhaled. Rosa reached for his hand. "You don't have to sign anything. This isn't about law. It's about what you want." Micah opened the folder. Inside was a single-page document, legal but straightforward. Sean Doyle relinquished all paternal rights, including custody, medical decision, school authority, and future claims. Micah picked up the pen, then froze. For a long moment, everything blurred. His hand trembled, and the pen hovered above the page like it weighed 10 pounds. "What if I regret it later?" he asked. Grant replied quietly. "Then you'll know that you chose peace for a time when you needed it most." Micah looked up. "But doesn't this make me just someone who gave up?" "Nee," Grant said. "It makes you someone who let go of what was hurting you." Micah swallowed hard. He thought about all the times he'd waited by the door as a little boy, hoping his dad would show up, the birthdays, the missed science fairs, the silence. Then he thought about Jasmine's pep talks, Dr. Reyes's encouragement, Eli's steady guidance, and Grant's quiet presence at every milestone since. He never built a family with Sean, Micah realized. He built one with everyone else. He signed, slow, clean, no flourish, no second guess, just ink and breath, and finally a kind of stillness. Outside the building, the cold air felt sharper than usual. Grant and Micah walked down the sidewalk as Rosa stayed back to finish paperwork with Eli. For a while, they said nothing. Then Micah spoke. "Is it weird that I don't feel happy?" "No," Grant said. "Freedom isn't always joyful. Sometimes it just feels quiet." Micah nodded. They reached the curb. Grant turned toward him. "You know," he said, "when I lost my daughter, I thought the world ended. I kept living, but I stopped participating." Micah looked up, but then a kid gave me a crumpled dollar and said, "You look hungry." And something came back to life. Micah blinked. "That's the first time you said it out loud." Grant smiled faintly. "Some things take time." Micah held his breath, then asked, "Do you think I'll ever stop wondering what it would have been like to have a real dad?" Grant looked away for a moment. When he looked back, his eyes were soft. "I think the wondering never really ends. But over time, the question changes from why wasn't he there to who showed up instead." Micah swallowed the lump in his throat. Grant reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. He handed it to Micah. "What's this A key?" Grant said. "To my old workshop, the place I used to build things. Think, be quiet." Micah turned the key over in his palm. "You're welcome there any time." Grant added, "No obligations, just space to create." Micah smiled, small but real. "Thanks," he said. "Anytime." Grant replied. That night, Micah sat by the window in his bedroom, watching city lights flicker. He opened his notebook. This time, he didn't just scribble. He wrote, not a letter, not a journal, a truth. You don't need someone's permission to stop being hurt by them. You just need the courage to choose something better. And for the first time in a long while, he slept soundly. The old workshop sat just off Brindle Avenue, tucked between an upholstery shop and a half-forgotten bookstore with dusty window displays. If you weren't looking for it, you'd miss it completely. Micah stood in front of the narrow gray door, key in hand, the metal still warm from his pocket. He hesitated, not because he was unsure, but because he understood that once he stepped through, something would shift quietly, like a leaf falling from a tree, something personal. He turned the key. The lock clicked, and the door swung open with a soft groan. The air inside smelled like sawdust, faint coffee, and old paper. Dust floated in warm shafts of sunlight. The space was larger than he expected, one long room with scattered workbenches, rolled-up blueprints, and bits of old text stacked neatly on shelves. It was quiet, but not empty. Micah stepped inside, letting the door fall gently shut behind him. The table near the back still had tools laid out from years ago, metal rulers, drafting pens, a magnifying lamp. Nearby, an unfinished model of what looked like a water purification rig sat mid-construction, abandoned but carefully preserved. He reached out, running his hand along the wood. This place had seen Grant's solitude, his grief, and probably his first ideas after losing everything. Now, it was his. Micah pulled out his notebook. He flipped past the pages of half-sentences and messy feelings, past courtroom notes, past sketches of bottle drives and old sleeping spots, and landed on a blank page. He titled it, "Kindness That Builds." Then he began to write, not for school, not for therapy, but for himself, ideas, little ones at first. A pantry program that could run out of old vending machines, mobile tutoring for kids who work jobs after school, a science club that used only recycled materials. He didn't know how to build any of it yet, but he knew what he wanted it to feel like: dignity, choice, not pity, possibility. The next day, he brought Jasmine to the workshop. "Whoa," she said, stepping inside, her eyes wide. "This is where Wexler used to work." "Yeah," Micah said, grinning. "Now it's kind of ours." She touched the edge of the workbench. "Feels like something big happened here." Micah nodded. "A lot of healing, I think." She turned to him. "So what are you going to do with it?" Micah lifted a file folder. Inside were hand-drawn plans and sticky notes filled with questions and arrows. "I want to build something that gives kids like us more than sympathy," he said. "I want them to feel respected." Jasmine smiled. "That's different." "Exactly." By week's end, Grant visited. He walked slowly around the room, hand-grazing familiar corners, eyes trailing over the same blueprints he'd once abandoned. He stopped in front of Micah's sketch pinned to the corkboard, a community-powered science space, part maker lab, part food bank, with a corner for storytelling and writing. "This you?" he asked. Micah shrugged. "The start of it." Grant smiled faintly. "You know what my first idea was in this room?" Micah shook his head. "A portable generator powered by walking, inspired by a stray dog who kept following me around the block every day." Micah raised an eyebrow. "That's either genius or crazy, maybe both." Grant said with a chuckle. But the point is, I started here because I wanted to help. Then I forgot. You're helping me remember. He turned, meeting Micah's eyes. You don't owe me anything, Grant said gently. But if this place becomes something again, I'd be honored to build with you. Micah felt his throat tighten. I'd like that. That weekend, Rosa stopped by for the first time. She stood in the doorway for a long moment, just watching her son. He was at the workbench, sleeves rolled up, explaining something to a small group of younger students from their apartment building. Jasmine helped arrange materials while an old stereo played soft music in the background. Rosa didn't speak. She didn't need to. Micah caught her eye, smiled. She nodded a look that said everything without saying a word. He had turned pain into purpose. He had turned $1 into something that now filled an entire room. The pilot version of Kindness Lab opened quietly 2 weeks later. No press, no headlines, just 10 kids, 2 volunteers, a dozen notebooks, and a wall filled with sticky notes that read things like, "What's something you've never been taught but always wanted to learn? If you had $5 to help someone, what would you do? What's one thing that makes you feel powerful without hurting anyone else?" And at the center of it all, a simple quote, scribbled in Micah's handwriting and pinned above the door, "The smallest gift, when given freely, echoes louder than the largest one given with expectation." And just like that, the echo began. The Kindness Lab was quiet that morning. Sunlight spilled through the high windows, catching motes of dust that shimmered in golden trails across the floor. The scent of warm pencils, cardboard boxes, and peppermint tea lingered in the air. Micah Green sat cross-legged on the floor, helping a little girl named Aria build a windmill out of paper cups and straws. Her smile was missing a front tooth. Her concentration was fierce. "Will it fly?" she asked seriously. Micah smiled. "It'll spin. And that's where all good ideas start." Behind them, Jasmine was setting up the whiteboard with that week's question, what makes someone safe to trust? It was the kind of question that took longer to answer the older you got. At 11 the bell over the front door jingled. Micah looked up from the floor. A man in his late 20s stood in the doorway tall, nervous, a little underdressed for the cool weather. He held something in his hand. A sandwich, maybe. Or a folded piece of paper. He looked lost. Micah stood slowly. "Can I help you?" The man glanced around. "This the science thing." The kid center Micah nodded. "We call it the Kindness Lab. What are you looking for?" The man exhaled. "Honestly, I'm not sure." He stepped forward, awkward. "My niece. She used to live near here. Said some kid helped her with a math project and gave her a notebook. Now she's applying to some magnet program and thinks she's going to be an engineer." Micah smiled softly. "Sounds like Jasmine's doing." The man rubbed the back of his neck. "I don't know what I'm doing here. I've messed up a lot of things in my life. Never thought I'd be the kind of person who walks into a place like this." Micah didn't flinch. "You are now." The man held out the folded paper. "I wrote something. It's not much. Just a plan. Thought maybe I could learn." Micah took the paper. On it was a sketch clumsy, rushed but real. A blueprint for a recycled shoe drive box that could double as a bench in winter. He looked up. "What's your name?" Micah asked. "Terrence." The man said, "No one important." Micah paused. He handed the paper back. "You are now," he said again, more firmly. "Come on. Let me show you the bench tools." Later that day, after everyone had left and Jasmine had gone to meet her aunt, Micah stayed behind to clean up. Grant Wexler stopped by just after dusk, as always, never hovering, never inspecting, just showing up. He leaned against the doorway, watching Micah sweep glitter from the floor. "Good crowd today," Grant said. "Yeah, even had a surprise visitor," Micah replied, nodding toward the recycled shoe bench in progress. Grant stepped closer. "You look different." Micah tilted his head. "Tired? No. Grounded." Grant said, Micah exhaled. I feel it. Not all the way, but more than I ever did. There was a pause. Then Micah said, "When I gave you that dollar, I didn't think it mattered. It was just what I had." Grant nodded. "And it mattered more than anything you could have planned." Micah looked around the room. "I used to think power came from money, or court rulings, or even biology." And now Grant asked. Micah met his eyes. "Now I think it comes from consistency. From who keeps showing up." Grant nodded once, slowly. Then he turned to leave but paused at the door. "You gave me back something I didn't think I'd ever feel again," he said. "Hope." Micah smiled. "You gave me something too." "What's that? A place to build my own." That night, back at the apartment, Rosa poured 2 cups of tione for her, one for Micah. They sat on the couch, wrapped in soft blankets. The city murmured beyond the window. "Do you ever miss him?" she asked softly. Micah thought for a long moment. "I miss the idea of him," he said, "but I don't miss waiting." Rosa placed a hand on his. He looked at her, eyes steady. "You never stopped showing up. That's what stayed." She pulled him close. "And I always will." Micah didn't reply. He didn't need to. In his room, under the gentle hum of the lamp, Micah opened his notebook one last time. He wrote a final entry. "Some people give because they have extra. Others give because they understand what it means to have nothing. I gave what I had. The world gave something back. But the most powerful thing I ever received was permission to give again." He folded the page neatly, placed it in a small tin box beside his bed. Not because he needed to hide it, but because some truths don't need repeating, only remembering. And remembering was enough. Some gifts come wrapped in ribbons, others come wrapped in silence, sacrifice, and strength. Micah Green didn't change the world with his $1. He changed it by believing in kindness, even when he had nothing left to give. And when the world tried to erase him, he didn't fight with fists. He stood with truth, with presence, with the courage to walk away from the people who failed him and toward those who chose him. This story isn't just about a boy and a billionaire. It's about how we define family. It's about who shows up. And it's about every child, every mother, every human being who's ever been overlooked, underestimated, or used, finding the power to say, "I decide who I become." Let this be a reminder. Discrimination, neglect, and manipulation have no place in the world we're building, but compassion that echoes for generations. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us tell more powerful stories, stories that heal, question, and inspire. And if you've ever given from the heart, even when you had nothing, you're already part of this story. We'll see you in the next one.